You said this year would be different. That this time, you'd truly commit, wake up early, take action daily, eat with discipline, train your body like a man who honors himself. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you did. But then came the drift, the doubt, the whisper, and once again, you stopped. You don't need more goals. You don't need another planner. You don't need to write it down again. You need to understand why you keep quitting on yourself. You need to confront the invisible pattern that has ruled your life for years. You need to realize that the reason you keep restarting is because you haven't yet become the man who finishes. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are not lazy. You are simply untrained in mental law. And until you master that law, you will relive the same season under a different name again and again.
365 days promised, 17 days completed, regret by February, silence by March. But that cycle ends here. This is not another speech meant to inspire you. This is a system designed to transform you. If you listen, not casually, but with urgency, with spiritual obedience, with the decision of a man who is done starting over, you will learn how to obey your purpose with unbreakable consistency, finish what you start without leaning on emotion, forge an identity so strong that failure can't find a foothold. You'll train your mind to move daily, regardless of feeling. You'll master your thoughts, your voice, your environment. You'll break the cycle of quitting and never go back again. The man who learns this law becomes dangerous, calm, structured. He moves with the posture of someone who knows exactly what he's building and will not stop until it's complete. You've had the desire. You've seen the vision. You've made the promises. Now it's time to become the man who keeps them. But hear this warning. If you walk away from this message, you may drift for another year, another decade. But if you stay, if you obey, everything changes. This is the dividing line. So ask yourself now, are you ready to finally become the man who never starts over again? Then listen, and do not drift. Part 1, the invisible pattern, why you always return to zero. If your life feels like a series of restarts, if your ambition roars in January but dies in silence by February, if you make promises to act, to train, to speak with discipline, to rise early, to build your business, to fix your habits, but still end up back where you began, let's remove the illusions. You are not lazy. You are undisciplined in identity. Men confuse effort with structure. They confuse desire with law. They confuse excitement with transformation. But no man has ever built lasting wealth, character, or dominion through excitement. He built it by obeying invisible laws through visible action. You do not rise by emotion. You rise by obedience to law. Men hear truth all the time. They nod, they underline it in books, but their life never changes. Why? Because they heard it, but they did not listen. To hear is passive. To listen is to act. To listen is to change your environment, to destroy the door back to failure, to build a new pattern from the inside out. And I must warn you, if you do not finish this message, if you drift midway through, if you allow distraction to interrupt the very voice you claimed you needed, you will repeat the same pattern again, not because you are weak, but because your mind is still ruled by the old law. God does not bless indecision. The law cannot reward hesitation. The door you seek will not open for the man who still negotiates with excuses. But when a man becomes definite, everything begins to obey him. Time, energy, people, provision, doors. They move when you move, but you must move in law. Let us begin, because until this cycle is broken, your future remains chained to your past. No plan, no goal, no journal, no diet, no business scheme will survive unless the invisible pattern inside you is broken and rebuilt. This is the truth you must face. You always return to zero because you have trained yourself to do so, not deliberately, not with intent, but through repetition. You start, you drift, you fall, you start again, and over time, this becomes your identity, and identity is law. Identity governs behavior. Stop thinking you can change your life with more effort. You cannot. You change your life by changing the structure that controls your behavior, and that structure is built in thought, in word, and in repetition. What you say daily, what you allow daily, what you silently believe, that becomes the law of your life. There is a name for this in the invisible realm. I call it the law of cosmic habit force. It is the spiritual law that cements repetition into rhythm. It's why failure repeats, why success multiplies, why you can sabotage a goal even when you want it with your whole heart, because your subconscious follows pattern, not desire. In my own life, I delayed publishing Think and Grow Rich, not because I lacked content, but because I hadn't yet killed the pattern of self-doubt, perfectionism, and delay. The book was ready, but I was not, and the world had to wait until I became definite, until my identity matched my assignment. This isn't weakness, it's lawlessness in the mind. You want results that are built in law, but your daily life is governed by moods, whims, and inconsistency, so the results never last.
They rise for a moment, then die in silence. And you start over, again and again, but no more. Say this aloud now. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. You must see the trap to escape it. The trap is emotion-based identity. The man who acts only when he feels like it is doomed to repeat failure, because emotion is undisciplined. Emotion is momentary. Emotion is shaped by environment. But the man who builds identity by law, he cannot be moved. You must begin to view your repeated failures not as random, but as spiritual habit loops. They are rehearsed. They are reinforced. And every time you quit, you train your subconscious to say, this is who I am, and then you live it out again, not because you hate progress, but because your identity does not match your goal. You've become good at starting, skilled at recommitting, a master of declaring change. But the man who succeeds is not the one who starts loud. It is the one so rooted in law that his behavior becomes automatic. That is the man who finishes. This invisible pattern is not broken by emotion. It is broken by structure. Wake at the same hour. Think the same focused thoughts. Speak your definite chief aim aloud, morning and night. Train your mind like you would train a wild beast, with repetition and force. And hear me, the man who still entertains distraction cannot break this cycle. If your phone, your environment, your acquaintances have more influence over you than your inner command, you will lose again. Not because the goal is too big, but because your allegiance is divided. The mind must be directed like an army, commanded by thought, filled with order, because if you don't dominate it, it will drift. And when it drifts, it will default to the last program it obeyed. That program is failure, until you replace it with identity. Say it again with me. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. This is the moment you stop making decisions based on how you feel and start making them based on who you must become. If you only act when it's easy, you will never escape the cycle. But when you act because it is required, the law will reward you. You are not your old story. You are not your last attempt. You are what you decide today, and your mind is waiting to be told what is now law. But law must be enforced. It must be written, spoken, reinforced, inhabited, until identity is rewired. And once identity is rewired, you will no longer start over, because the new man does not return to the old path. He walks in a straight line. He walks in completion. He walks in fire. He walks as one who knows. He was born to finish what he begins. This is why you sabotage your momentum, because once the feeling fades, there's no structure left to support you. You built your actions on emotion, not on purpose. But purpose must be decided in advance and reinforced through daily obedience, or your mind will slip back into drift and call it rest. Say this aloud with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. Men launch businesses with vision, but stop once the applause fades. They begin disciplines, but quit when discomfort rises. They commit to health, but break it when convenience knocks. Why? Not because the goal was wrong, but because the man never mastered drift. The man who breaks the drift habit doesn't ask, how do I feel today? He asks, what is required of me today? He doesn't wait for inspiration. He moves in repetition. He speaks his aim aloud when no one is watching. He guards his mind. He refuses delay because he understands every day he drifts, his dream bleeds. Thomas Edison endured 10,000 failed attempts, not because he was superhuman, but because there was no room in his mind for drift. His definiteness was immovable. Delay didn't discourage him. Criticism couldn't bend him. Discomfort never stopped him, because his vision was more real than his feelings. That is what you must now build, a mind so definite, so closed to drift, that when it tries to enter, it finds no access, no permission, no negotiation. The man who walks with purpose does not need motivation. He is possessed by his aim. His habits don't ask for approval. They obey inner law. You must now remove the triggers of drift, distractions, idle conversations, environments that feed passivity. You must eliminate every doorway to comfort that weakens your command, because every moment spent in drift must be paid for in delay. The cost of drift is not just lost time, it is lost identity. Every day you drift, you tell your mind that direction is optional, and when direction becomes optional, discipline becomes impossible. Drift does not just delay your goals, it weakens the man. Say it again with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no partial escape from this. You are either definite or you are drifting. There is no middle ground. A man cannot walk with purpose on some days and with distraction on others. He must choose one. And if he does not choose, drift chooses for him. Drift leads to apathy. Apathy leads to confusion. Confusion leads to guilt. Guilt leads to surrender. And then you find yourself a month later wondering what happened again. and the cycle begins again, until the day you burn the bridges to drift and declare new law within yourself. You must now repeat your chief aim every morning and every night, not sometimes, not when it feels powerful, always. Repeat it until it governs your speech, your thoughts, your movement, until no part of you remains available for drift. This is not just strategy. It is spiritual protection. The man who lives in definiteness is guarded. His mind is aligned. His thoughts are fortified. Drift cannot enter a soul already commanded by decision. The devil flees the man who is occupied by purpose. Drift is the destroyer of empires, and it begins with small permissions. Tomorrow, later, just one day off. These are not harmless phrases. They are seeds, and once they grow, they choke your energy like weeds. They suffocate your vision until you forget you ever had one. But you remember now. That's why you're still here, still listening, because some part of you knows nothing changes until drift is destroyed. You cannot build a future with one hand on purpose and the other in procrastination. You must release the second. You must become unavailable to drift. Say it again. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no second life. There is no alternate season. There is only this one. And if you do not command it now, it will be spent in delay disguised as effort. But the man who destroys drift becomes a law unto himself. He finishes what he begins. He commands his environment, and life submits. Part 4, the identity gap. Why you keep starting over. You don't have a discipline problem. You don't have a strategy problem. You have an identity gap. You keep starting over because your actions are not anchored in who you believe yourself to be. And no matter how powerful your plan is, your life will always follow your identity, not your effort. You don't need more willpower. You need a new self-image. You must become the man who finishes, not just the man who desires, who begins, who proclaims, but the man who crosses the line. Until your inner man reflects the end result, you will always fall back into the image of the man who quits. This is the truth most men refuse to face. They speak with the voice of ambition, but they still think with the identity of mediocrity. And what you think of yourself in silence will always defeat what you say out loud, because your results obey your subconscious, not your declarations. A man may write his chief aim on paper, but if in thought he still sees himself as weak, behind, inconsistent, then that aim is already buried. You must build a new picture of who you are before you try to walk into the vision, because the man who still thinks like a failure will always find a way to fail. Charles M. Schwab didn't become the steel magnate of his time by accident. He was born to an average family, but he refused to think average. He walked into boardrooms before anyone believed in him, but he believed in himself. His identity was forged long before his name was known, and the world catches up to the man who first becomes within. Stop chasing success. Start embodying the version of you that's already trusted with it. Because until you become the man mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you will sabotage every opportunity handed to you. Say this aloud. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart. I complete my actions. I serve my new identity. Behavior is not random. It is the outgrowth of self-perception. If you see yourself as the man who falls off after 30 days, you will. If you see yourself as the man who loses interest when progress slows, you will. If you believe you are the man who never follows through, then you are, and that belief becomes law. You must tear down the image of the quitter. You must bury the story of inconsistency. You must write a new mental biography, a man who obeys law, a man who builds rhythm, a man unavailable for old excuses, a man who finishes what he begins, because that is who he is. The mistake is thinking your past behavior defines you. It doesn't. The only thing that defines you is the voice you obey now. And when that voice begins to say, I finish, I do not drift, I command my day, I complete what I start, then every thought, habit, and result must align with that new man. The subconscious asks only one question, who am I serving today? And it serves the voice it hears most often. If that voice is guilt, doubt, regret, it will build in that image. If that voice is confidence, clarity, decision, it will rebuild your life to reflect it. The choice is daily, and the voice must be enforced. You do not need to try harder. You need to become different. Wake up and speak as the man who cannot be moved by circumstance, who no longer repeats apologies for drifting, who no longer negotiates with delay, who no longer entertains the identity of the man he buried in silence, and you must act accordingly. Don't wait until you feel like the man who finishes. Move like him, speak like him, plan like him, cut distractions like him, guard your mind like him. You don't become him through waiting. You become him through obedience to identity before it feels real. Say it again with me. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart. I complete my actions. I serve my new identity. This is how the cycle ends, not by changing what you do, but by changing who you are when you do it. If you want new fruit, plant new seed. And the most powerful seed is self-definition. Say it daily, live it hourly, act without compromise, and your reality will bow to your command. You are not waiting for transformation. You are speaking it into form. You are not beginning another cycle. You are closing the gate to failure. You are now becoming the man whom habit must obey, whom emotion must obey, whom circumstance must obey, because your voice has become law in your own life. This is no longer about motivation. This is about dominion. The man who commands himself cannot be ruled by the past. The man who sees himself as victorious cannot tolerate delay. The man who has become cannot be broken, because his identity is no longer up for debate. From this moment forward you finish, not because it's easy, not because it's convenient, but because it is required by the man you are now. You finish because you said you would, and what you say you obey, and what you obey you become. Emotional escape. Emotion was never meant to lead, it was meant to be governed. The man who fails to govern his emotions will be governed by them. He will call tiredness truth, discouragement divine guidance, weakness wisdom. He will build his life on what he feels, not on what is required. Every time you started strong, then faded, you blamed discipline, but it wasn't a failure of discipline. It was an identity surrendered to emotion. When a man decides who he is, he acts from principle, not permission. He doesn't ask how he feels. He commands what he does. Let's be clear. Every time you quit, you believed the lie of emotion, that it was too much, that it didn't matter, that no one would notice, that maybe next week would be better, that one slip was acceptable. So you slipped, and then you surrendered, calling it starting over. This is why repetition is king, because you don't rise through emotion. You rise through structure. You win by walking. When it feels dead, you act. When it feels pointless, you train. When it feels heavy, you persist, because you no longer trust feelings. You trust your decision. Thomas Edison did not invent the electric light by following emotion. He was mocked, misunderstood. He endured 10,000 failures, but he did not walk by how he felt. He walked by law. When emotion screamed, give up, his identity whispered, continue, say it aloud. Now my feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. Emotions are visitors. Laws are residents. The man who builds his house on visitors is destined to fall, but the man who builds on spiritual law, principle, repetition, and daily obedience becomes unshakable. His results rise not from passion, but from persistence. You must now rewire your understanding of obedience. Obedience is not slavery, it is power, the power to obey your chief aim. When your feelings want to delay, that is the highest form of authority, because you have become master of yourself, and the man who masters himself cannot be broken by the world. How many dreams have died because you felt tired? How many goals abandoned because you felt alone? How many days wasted because you felt behind? Every one of those emotions came then left, but the damage remained because you gave emotion the final vote. This ends now. From this moment forward you must act. Even when you feel nothing, you must complete your habits. Whether you feel like a champion or a failure, you must repeat your chief aim, even when your voice trembles, because the act of obedience transforms identity. Emotion can no longer be your compass. Decision is your compass. Vision is your compass. The man you are becoming is your compass. Feelings are just clouds. They pass, change, deceive, but law remains, and the man who walks in law cannot fall for long. Say it again with me. My feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. Let's be clear. If you keep seeking permission from emotion, you will repeat this cycle your whole life. Not because you're weak, but because you never built your days around principle. Until you do, every failure will look like fatigue, when in truth it's emotional escape. You must now set a law within yourself. I do not stop. I do not slow. I do not quit. My steps may be small, but they are daily. My identity is no longer for sale. It is sealed in action, forged by habit, anchored in repetition. When you act while feeling nothing, you're not failing. You're becoming. You're moving deeper into power. You're building a foundation the world cannot shake, because it is no longer based on mood. It is based on mission. From this point on, let no emotion interrupt your progress. Feel it, but do not follow it. Acknowledge it, but do not obey it. Soon the emotions that used to derail you will submit to you. They will bend to the new man you have become. You are not a machine, but you are not a slave. You are a spiritual being designed for dominion. The more you act in defiance of emotion, the more your subconscious accepts that you are no longer the man who quits. And that is how cycles are broken, not by new emotion, but by new decisions, repeated in defiance of the old man. Once the new rhythm sets, emotion no longer resists. It supports, because now it must serve the new pattern you've chosen. Say it aloud one final time. My feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. The old you obeyed comfort. The new you obeys calling. The old you followed passion. The new you follows purpose. The old you asked, do I feel ready? The new you commands, it is already done, and now your life will rise to obey you. Part 7. The decision principle. Finish what you begin, or start the cycle again. There comes a moment when every man must decide, not feel, not hope, not wait. Decide. Until that decision is made fully and finally, with no room for retreat, his life will remain on repeat. The cycle will continue. Promises will collapse. Time will pass him by. Every time you begin something and fail to finish it, you're not just delaying success. You're teaching your subconscious that quitting is permitted. And once that lesson is planted, it grows into hesitation, doubt, paralysis. One day the idea of finishing will feel foreign. The world remembers only those who complete. The man who stops halfway is buried in silence. His work forgotten, his potential wasted. Because success does not reward starters, it crowns finishers. Only the man who sees the work through to the end will command power in this life. You don't fail because you lack talent. You fail because you lack finality. You leave the door open. You entertain retreat. You begin with enthusiasm, but without decision. So when pressure rises, you still see the exit, and the part of you that hasn't committed walks through it. You must now learn the law. Decision is power. Not decision today, decision for good. The man who finishes decides once. He does not revisit the contract. He does not question the pain. He does not pause when it gets heavy, because the decision has already been made. Say it aloud now. I complete what I begin. I cross the line. I burn the bridge. I walk in completion. The reason you keep starting over is because your decisions are soft. They are emotional, temporary, made for the moment, not fortified for pressure. But a real decision is eternal. It is not based on feelings. It is built on identity, enforced by action. Abraham Lincoln decided he would not stop until slavery was abolished and the Union preserved. He was attacked, doubted, broken, but he never retreated, because the decision was carved in stone. Men who carve decisions do not drift. The indecisive man never builds momentum. He stops and starts, questions himself, waits for signs, checks the weather. In that time, the decisive man has finished. While one wonders what to do, the other is already on to the next mountain. This is the harsh truth. Every incomplete task drains your power. Every goal half done teaches your mind you are not trustworthy. Eventually, you stop setting goals altogether, not because you lack vision, but because you no longer believe you will follow through. You must repair that belief by completion. No more half-built plans. No more empty promises. From this day on, you finish everything you touch. Whether it takes a day or a year, you finish because you no longer see options. You see only the line and the act of crossing it. Say it again. I complete what I begin. I cross the line. I burn the bridge. I walk in completion. The man who finishes is feared by the world because he cannot be stopped by resistance. He does not quit. He does not question. He outlasts opposition, delays, distractions, because his inner contract is sealed. His actions are law, and life must obey him. This is not about speed. It is about integrity. You do not need to race. You need to endure. You need to stay when others walk away. You need to remain when it no longer feels thrilling, because the man who stays becomes the man who reigns. Let me ask you, how many times have you come close? How many times were you inches from breakthrough, but gave up just short of the finish line? How many years have those unfinished dreams haunted you, not because you failed, but because you never finished? This is the cost of indecision. Regret. Regret is the silent agony of the man who knew what to do, but never did it long enough to win. He remembers the moments. He recalls the fire, but the work lies incomplete, and the cycle resets no more. From this day forward, you become the man who follows through, not out of hype, not out of pride, but out of obedience to law, because once decided, it's not a matter of if, it is only a matter of when. Every time you want to quit, say aloud, I complete what I begin. I cross the line. I burn the bridge. I walk in completion. This is your seal. This is your contract. And once repeated enough times, your subconscious will accept it. It will expect completion. It will build the energy, stamina, clarity you need, not because the outside changed, but because you did. You are no longer a man who returns to zero. You are the man who finishes the course, the man who puts pen to paper and does not drop it until the task is done, the man who gives commands and obeys them. You must finish, not for praise, not because others are watching, but because your identity is on the line. Every day you finish, you cast a vote for your future self. Soon finishing becomes your nature, rhythm, and law, and then there are no more cycles. There are only completions. Part 8, the new pattern, obedience, repetition, and the law of completion. The old pattern is dead. The man who delayed, drifted, doubted, disappeared, that man no longer exists, because today you install a new pattern, a pattern of law, a rhythm of completion, an identity that cannot be broken, forged in obedience and repetition. You don't break a pattern by wishing. You don't escape failure by emotion. You replace the old with new law, and the law must be written, spoken, forced, and repeated until it becomes unconscious, until it becomes the rhythm of your life, until quitting feels unnatural. Obedience is your new foundation, not to the outside, but to the inner voice, the voice of destiny, the voice that speaks your chief aim aloud every morning and night, the voice that does not ask how you feel. It tells you what is required, and you obey. Say this aloud now. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. The law of cosmic habit force is not a mystery. It is always working. The rhythm of your daily speech, thought, and behavior, and it either works for you or against you. You cannot turn it off. You only choose to use it to rise, or allow it to bury you in repetition of failure. If your life has been governed by the cycle of starting and quitting, it is because your habits serve the old identity. But now you have made a new decision, and that decision must be enforced by new habits. Those habits must be repeated without exception. Every morning, wake and repeat your chief aim with intensity. Speak it aloud as if your life depends on it, because it does. Your future obeys your repetition. Your mind listens. What it hears daily becomes what it believes, expects, and creates. Every day you act on your plan. No more 0 days. No more negotiations. You move, you build, you obey, because your word is now law, and your behavior is no longer emotional. It is structural. Every night before sleep, speak your aim again. Affirm who you are. Reject the old man. Declare the man you are becoming. You no longer drift into darkness. You command your subconscious before it carries you into dreams. Now you plant only what you want to harvest. Say it again. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. Let's speak plainly. The world does not reward talent. It rewards consistency. And consistency is no longer a struggle when it becomes your nature, when stopping is no longer an option, when you've closed the door on returning. This is how empires are built, not by bursts, not by hype, but by lawful repetition. Rockefeller spent years moving in silence, structured, obscure, unseen, while the world laughed or ignored him. But when his rhythm matured, his wealth exploded, because he obeyed law before he received reward. You must do the same. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply in a new season. Now you install the structure that makes success automatic. You wake at the hour you declared. You move without question. You complete your work. You repeat your vision. And the law begins to serve you. No more waiting. No more emotional resets. No more new year, new you. There is only this, the man you chose to become now, and that man finishes. That man is dangerous to failure. That man walks with fire. That man is immovable. Let it be known, you have installed the pattern of success. You have chosen obedience. You have chosen repetition. And now the law must yield. You no longer ask for results. You expect them, because you have earned them. Through silence, decision, daily action, mental dominion, the results are no accident. They are the fruit of identity. This is the pattern that does not fail. Every man who has followed it, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Lincoln, Schwab, has become greater than his origin, not because of luck, but because of law. So speak it aloud once more. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. And now walk. Walk in completion. Walk in law. Walk as the man who never starts over again.